Up next, something that's very close to our heart is the manpower resource planning for recovery. And this is the panel discussion that we especially invited our panel speakers and moderator to join us, where we would like to discuss our workforce strategies for post-COVID recovery. I would now like to invite our speakers to take their seats on stage. Before that, allow me to introduce our moderator for today, Mr. Goh Jia Yong from Ernst & Young Advisory. Ladies and gentlemen, a big hand for Jia Yong, please. Joining him on stage, we have our panelists. Please join me and welcome Mr. Kenneth Lim from the Singapore Tourism Board. Mr. Gilbert from the NTUC Training and Placement Division. And Mr. Albert Ho from City State Travel. Once again, a warm welcome, gentlemen, and I'll hand it over to Jia Yong. Ladies and gentlemen, a big warm welcome.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning, and we're going to come into the afternoon as well. I just want to share something. Before, this morning as I was heading here, a part of me was almost fearful that nobody would show up today because of all the news that happened yesterday, and I think we're all busy kind of planning and preparing ourselves for what's going to happen in April. But I'm very glad to see a very big turnout. Maybe it's time for us to take an opportunity to just pat ourselves a little bit on the back a little bit, right? What I mean by that is that, it's been 2 years. Leaders here in leading your respective organizations, you've, persevered through the entire experience over the last 2 years. You have motivated your workers. You have helped your workers be resilient and of course, pivot through the various things. So if I can just propose that everybody give a round of applause for ourselves just to tide through those tough times. And we are all looking forward to better times, yeah? With me, of course, my esteemed panelists, they've very kindly joined me on this session today. So what we're going to do is I have a series of questions to ask each and every one of them. And we'll take through and see what they are thinking about as well, yeah? So let me first come to really my first question, right? And, as what we saw yesterday, not just Singapore is opening up, but borders around the world are starting to open up as well, right? And of course, then what that means for us from a workforce perspective is that we need to help our people be ready for the growth that potentially will come or the recovery that potentially will come ahead, right? There are some emerging trends and emerging skills that our people will need, some of which Mr. Keith Tan spoke about earlier this morning. I perhaps want to ask Kenneth to elaborate on some of these things, right? What in your thoughts are some of these trends and skills that our people need to be ready for moving ahead?
Right. Thanks, Jia Yong. Thanks for the question. And I think indeed, as you shared earlier, I think a round of applause was really appropriate. I think the last 2 years was really difficult for all our travel agent partners here.
Yep.
And I think they really managed to sort of hold out. And hopefully there's light at the end of the tunnel now with the announcement by PM yesterday.
Yep.
Right. So in terms of your questions, right, in terms of the trends that we are seeing, maybe let me bucket it into two areas. I think one is more cyclical, immediate trends, and a lot of it has been driven by COVID. And then I'll touch on maybe more longer-term structural changes that we are seeing. So in terms of cyclical trends, I think one, first and foremost, clearly, I think, could you hear me earlier?
Yeah, I think so.
Can, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. I think in terms of cyclical trends, I think what we are seeing is that with the borders reopening, there's going to be a real pent-up demand for travel, right? I think people want to travel big, they want to spend big.
Yep.
And this has been sort of validated by some surveys that have been done. I think Amadeus did a survey late last year where through their searches or through searches by travel agents, many people are actually searching for epic trips.
Yep.
Right? Expedia as well, I think back in November 2011, they also did a similar survey globally, and I think some Singaporeans were also part of the survey. And Expedia themselves also highlighted that many people were wanting to spend more, researching for more exotic destinations. And I think Singaporeans themselves, I think about 46% of the Singaporeans actually responded to say that in their next trip, when the borders reopen, they want to spend big. So I think this is good news for our travel agents, and I think that's really the pent-up demand that we're seeing, and it's probably that immediate trend that I think TAs should really take advantage of.
Yep.
So if I touch on the more longer-term structural changes in terms of what we are seeing is, and I think it was alluded to in some of the earlier presentations, I think by McKinsey, mentioned in the speeches by Keith as well as Stephen from Natas, is really about personalization.
Yep.
I think that's quite critical in terms of developing really personalized end-to-end service for our consumers. I think in this day and age, if we don't do that, I think we're out of the game. So I think it's very important to see how we can develop those personalized end-to-end service and help the visitors really and travelers navigate through some of the border restrictions and border measures. But I think more importantly, to demonstrate that the health and safety concerns of the visitors continue to be looked after.
Yep.
Right. And the last trend that we are seeing, and again was mentioned by Keith earlier in his opening address, is sustainability. I think sustainable travel is going to be top of mind of a lot of our consumers, a lot of our travelers, in terms of the destinations that they choose, the kind of products, experiences that they choose, even the kind of accommodation that they stay in. And I think travel agents will have a big role to play here to see how they can then help in the trip planning to ensure that they can create a very, very sustainable trip, probably minimizing the kind of carbon footprint by the individual.
Yep. Thanks. Great points that you have made around sustainability, around just transforming some of those experiences that we want to offer to our travelers coming into Singapore. Now, Albert, I want to come to you next. You kind of walked that journey yourselves, right? Over the last 2 years within your organization, you've had to kind of transform your workforce a little bit, right? So I want to make sure that we capture what are some of these key manpower challenges that you have kind of have to navigate, and how do you ready your workforce moving ahead? Yeah.
Thanks, Chair Yong, for the questions. I think we can trace this back to 2 years ago when the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
Like many other travel agents here, we have released more than 50% of our frontline employees since the pandemic. Now, when the VTL was introduced in September last year, it was a warm welcome shot in the arm for us. Yeah, something we so badly needed. For the first time in 20 months, we were beginning to see real light at the end of the tunnel. And then with this VTL, we actually saw corporate travel bookings increasing steadily over the last 6 months. And with the announcement yesterday by the government on the further relaxation of travel restrictions, I can say with confidence, I can tell you now that better days are ahead of us. Now, here comes the problem.
Yep.
A very good problem. Our frontline staff have been absolutely overwhelmed.
Yep.
Right? They are swamped and they are putting in a lot more hours. So, of course, we are confident that this upward trend will continue.
Yep.
Yeah, especially after yesterday's announcement. And of course, we have been trying to recruit more experienced staff. So naturally, we turn to our former employees. Yeah, that's one good source. It's been a bit of a challenge though, because many of them have pivoted to other industries and are quite reluctant to return. Yeah, so what do we do? Now, we know the job market has improved significantly in recent months. In fact, I read last week that for every unemployed person, there are 2 job vacancies.
Yep.
So despite these challenges, we will continue with our effort to look for people. Now, another challenge we are facing now is managing the expectation of the current team. Yeah, it is not unreasonable of them to expect the company to reinstate their salary cuts, and beyond that, an increase in salary. But we must remember we are still some way off, from full recovery in 2023, 2024. So we need to strike a fine balance between their expectation and the extent of business recovery. So how do we tackle these challenges? First of all, we have to accept that things will never be the same again. Yeah, even with the eventual full recovery, we will not have the same number of travel consultants that we used to have in the past. Not just because there's a much smaller pool, because we have to manage our overheads and focus on higher productivity. Yeah, so we are more convinced than ever before, yeah, that we must hasten the process of digitalization in our business operation.
Yep.
So I guess, in the travel management space, all this while we have been doing everything for our customers. I believe going forward we have to be a little bold to introduce the concept of DIY for our customer to be part of the booking process. Yeah, so a major initiative we are looking at is developing, customizing our own self-booking tools.
Right.
All right. And then part of the other thing is that we want to involve our customer to enable them to have access to their profiles and update them, in real time. Yeah.
Yep.
So these are some of the measures we are implementing, which I hope will help to address some of the current manpower issues.
Thanks, Albert.
Thank you.
I want to blend what you have said and what Kenneth said together, right? Kenneth spoke about some of these trends that we need to look out for looking ahead. You spoke about some of the issues we have to manage in terms of workforce expectations, customer expectations, transforming some of those expectations, right? So I want to blend both of them together, and Gilbert, I'm going to ask you a difficult question, right? For NTUC Training and Placement Division, you've been really working with tourism businesses on transformation. So how can companies in this industry kind of think about transforming themselves in line with the trends that Kenneth talked about, in line with the workforce and customer expectations that Albert spoke about?
Thanks, Jia Yong, and good morning to everyone. Oh, no, afternoon. Is it afternoon already? Yeah, good afternoon to everyone. We've just turned around. So I come from the training and placement portion of NTUC, so not the supermarkets, not just now someone talked about 2.4 million members. We've got 1 million union members, but I don't come from the supermarkets. I don't come from the childcare center looks after our children. I don't come from the insurance, but we come from the portion that partners businesses to be more profitable, more competitive, more sustainable in the long term. And we come from the portion that works with workers to be more employable and to be higher skilled. And that is actually Singapore's success story. How do companies and workers transform together so that companies are profitable and sustainable, and workers can earn a good pay, good living, and be able to win-win together. And I think, yes, we've been working in the tourism industry through various initiatives over the years. We've been working in many sectors. And I think it's difficult to say one or two or three things that will make a difference. But I will love to share with you what we have seen in working. I've been working on this for over the past slightly over 10 years. So what we have seen as a group that has helped various employers, various businesses, various workers through the years. So firstly, I think Albert, yeah, you shared correctly. The 2 years has been devastating, and companies had to release some permanently, some temporarily, and workers actually in the past 2 years we have seen quite a number that have found homes, employment homes elsewhere, because they needed to feed themselves, and it's a natural thing. And today we do hear about the opportunities, the growth, the opportunities in tourism industry, and in fact talking to STB, understanding the future and the opportunities in the future. So how do we attract them back? I think there are a few things maybe leave with you all. I can talk about it later. Firstly, maybe the aspect that I think Sujita, the McKinsey lady talked about, adaptability quotient. I think today we really hope, every employer here really hopes someone with the skills and the experience come in, plug and play, and can immediately deliver. But however, in a tight labor market like Singapore, sometimes that's not possible. Yes. Here and there, maybe you get some, but in general, it is not really possible. So how do we attract and recruit for adaptability, adapt and recruit for the potential to fit to culture, adapt and recruit for the mindsets and the value alignment, and then train for the skills and experience that can do the job. So how do we do that? Again, it's an art, I think, but there are various tools. You think about it, that means if that's the case, then your recruitment mechanism, your training mechanism has to be up to speed. And you need to use various tools to do that. Again, that's one of the things to think about. Secondly, of course, workforce composition. I think in the industry, you typically use full-time, a lot of part-time, freelancers, but age composition, nationality composition, how do you figure out which jobs will attract locals, which jobs will not, and to deploy your quotas that way to make sense. I think that's something we really need to think through. And with a different workforce composition, then that comes the challenge of managing different segments and different types of workforce with different attraction to purpose, different attraction to meaning, different attraction to companies, different attraction to what dollars and cents means to them. And I think that's something we need to figure out also. And I think we saw in the Q&A for Sujita that many questions along that area. And then thirdly, of course, we saw I like the minute tech thing. It was really fun. Tech adoption. While you talk about manpower, you talk about tech adoption. I think tech adoption impacts companies and the company's attractiveness to manpower quite a bit. Number one, tech adoption gives a company or a business the idea that it's probably going to last longer than a company that does not do tech. I mean, the whole world is talking about digital industry 4.0. Some talk about industry 5.0 even. But and if a person is looking for a career or a job and they see a company, completely analog, they will think twice. So how do you really adopt tech? But tech also gives you the added advantage of productivity, value add increase, which can then result in better profitability, which means you can pay better wages, and that will really attract workers in a tight labor market. So again, these are some ideas, a lot more that we can talk about later on. These are general ideas, and of course, it's often bespoke, so you need really a partnership. I think our Tourism Careers Hub can work with you to focus for your business, for your specific subsector, how do we focus manpower strategies that will work for you, business transformation strategies that will work for you, and to work with you on a company-by-company basis.
Thanks, Gilbert. I like the fact that you talk about the 4 Cs, right? The capacity, so what kind of workforce, what's the size of the workforce we want to bring back, similar to what Albert spoke about earlier. You spoke about capabilities, which is the second C, what kind of skills we need them to have, whether they are existing employees or people we want to bring back who are former employees, or perhaps even new employees that we want to bring to our organizations. You spoke about composition, right? What's that mix? Do we need to use gig workers, contractors, full-timers, part-timers? You also then spoke about continuity, right? How do we help our workforce grow and adapt to that new capabilities that we want them to have, right? I want to take this then to the next level, right? And this is where perhaps, Kenneth, I'm going to come to you, right? With the Tourism Careers Hub, how can this office really help companies in the sector kind of achieve all these things?
Yeah. So I'm glad I have a little bit more than 1 minute than tech pitches. So this is my pitch for the Tourism Career Hub. On behalf of STB, NTUC, the unions, as well as the support of all the key tourism associations, I think it's really a tripartite partnership. And the real impetus for why we started this was really to see, can we provide a service that can provide the kind of end-to-end value and end-to-end kind of support to both tourism workers and tourism business. Yep. If you think about it, it's almost akin to, say, a careers office in a university or IHL. So Singapore is a small microcosm. Can we do this for the tourism sector? That means as long as I'm a tourism worker, I come to Tourism Careers Hub, all my needs are met. And this is the pilot that we are trialing. So I think immediately, one of the three thrusts that we are looking at with regards to TCH when we first set it up. I think one is to address Albert's point, and I think it's not just Albert's point, but I think many of our other tourism business are facing is the immediate manpower crunch. What can we do? So TCH is, I think in the short term, we want to see how we can support all our tourism sectors, whether it's travel agents, hotels, and so on and so forth, to be able to address some of their manpower needs, recruitment needs, outsourcing needs, because we are working very closely with E2I, and E2I also has a list of, through their own networks, to find whether there are job seekers who are looking for opportunities within the tourism sector. So I think that is the short-term kind of issue that we are trying to address, and we want to make sure that as we embark on our recovery, we don't want to let manpower issues hamper our recovery and constrain our recovery.
Yep.
Right? I think the other thrusts is a bit more evergreen, but nevertheless very important. I think one is on skills upgrading. We heard it throughout the day, and I think Gilbert has just mentioned about it as well, the importance of upgrading skills. So this is what TCH should do. And I think what's important that TCH is going to look at is about customizable skills. So if you think about it, many of you all have probably sent your employees for training, and sometimes the training would be useful, but sometimes it's not. It's difficult for the employees to then see how they can bring the training back to their organization and use it for their own needs. So TCH intends to work with training providers to develop customizable content for the various subsectors within the tourism sector.
Yep.
So I think that is the other area that we're looking at. And last but not least, I think Gilbert also touched on is business transformation.
Yep.
And I think business transformation as well as career development, developing good human capital practices, they are one of the same. You can't detach and say, I'll just look at business transformation, but I'll ignore human capital development. I don't think you can do that today. It's quite proven out there that, if you keep employees happy with good remuneration, or you develop a good career growth plan, it will actually lead to higher motivation lead to higher productivity, and ultimately it will impact the bottom line of the company.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kenneth. Very good sharing. In EY, we also say the same thing, right? We say that transformation involves kind of technology at speed, innovation at scale, with humans at the center, right? So Gilbert, I want to come to you because you've been supporting organizations in terms of their business transformation efforts, and like what Kenneth said, a lot of it entails workforce transformation, right? Do you have any, maybe not without naming names, with any one or two examples that come to mind of companies that are really at the forefront of driving some of these changes for their own companies?
Maybe let me share. I can look down a little bit to sound louder.
Yeah.
Some of the challenges. So workforce transformation. So today there are massive skill gaps. Industry and skills needs change probably a lot faster than you can pick up the skills.
Yep.
And especially now with business picking up, everyone's busy manning phone lines, taking orders. They don't have time to train. And I think that was one of the questions we saw earlier.
Yep.
So companies that do well probably are able to figure out ways to deploy training, to focus on training in the midst of busyness of operation. And that is something which I think maybe the 2 years of COVID has helped companies to learn a little bit.
Yep.
So virtual methods, online methods, blended methods, and actually learning apps are a thing to stay. In fact, in the production line, people are busy, people need to be at the line. You cannot afford. But how do you get skills just in time to them? That's something that I think we need to figure out. So as an industry, do you want to do it as an industry level?
Yep.
Do you want to do it at a company level, a subsector level? How do we deploy online, bite-sized, regular learning, and then at times we put them together to reinforce that learning?
Yep.
And that's something which I've seen companies that help the workforce transform do better in certain sectors, and in certain companies,
Yep.
how that deploys. And if you want to go one step further, that online bite-sized learning can even be integrated to your learning management systems, your training management systems of your HR, if you're big enough. And I think that makes a difference. Secondly, I think workforce transformation often comes with companies that do well and encourage, it's not just about go and upgrade your skills. Usually it's about really what does the skill result in. And while I can go to a online or physical course, learn a skill, how do I then deploy the skill at the work? More often than not, we hear people go for a training and then come back and then they do something else. So really figuring out that roadmap of training, that needs analysis, that focus on training, that really will impact you, and giving the staff the opportunity to deploy some of this training, having a feedback mechanism, reinforces the fact that there is opportunity, and rewarding that training. It could be financial, it could be non-financial, it could be opportunities to serve more. It could be a feedback on the way you've done things better. And I think different generations will appreciate different forms of feedback, and maybe a variety of different feedback. But having that and helping them see that this could be a very important step in their career development plan. Today, people look for jobs, but actually many of them are looking for careers.
Exactly.
And if they're looking for a career, then how does that skill upgrading impact their career? I think good companies in manpower development, manpower transformation focus on that.
Yep, and it's great that you zoom in specifically from a company perspective, and I, at this point, want to come to Albert, right? City-state travel, you have been really quite innovative in terms of how you have managed some of these manpower and workforce issues over the last 2 years. What advice do you have for all of us looking ahead in the next 1 to 2 years around managing our workforce?
Well, I think I mentioned earlier on that we approached some of our former employees,
Yep.
and some of them actually didn't want to come back and told us they have lost confidence in the tourism business. They think if they were to go back, if another pandemic were to happen, they will go through the same cycle again. And besides, now they are getting better paid, more secure. So it set me thinking, perhaps we should, how can we attract and retain them, so that they can stay in the business. So I can think of 3 to 4 areas where we can do what we can. First of all, a competitive salary package comparable to other industry with similar skill set has to be the norm.
Right.
Yeah, going forward. Second, we must be able, like you have mentioned many times, we must be able to provide opportunities for continuous training and upgrading of skills to enhance their employability, to enhance their upward mobility in their career path. I hope the next time we send our staff for training, it's not because it's downtime. I think we've been conditioned, right, that we go for training because there's no business. Like what our speaker had, one of the speaker earlier on say, we must actually set aside time. All right, not because we are, we are now free, we have time. So that is very important. All right. Of course, training is important. It's also costly. So I think continued government support is important.
Yep.
All right. So third thing to make it a little bit more attractive to stay in the line is work-life balance. Yeah, a lot of people talk about work-life balance. We know work-life balance is about getting your job done in the office and still have the time and energy to enjoy your personal life.
Yep.
Yeah, we know that the positive effects are better efficiency, better productivity, and overall personal well-being. So that's something I think we should not take for granted. Yeah. Lastly, I want to talk about travel industry benefits. I know this is a long shot. Yeah. There was a time industry players like airlines, hotels, attractions used to give very attractive rates for travel agents, especially frontline employees. Now, I'm afraid to say that those is no longer the case today. Yeah, so I think they are saying that, hey, with best available rates in the market now, it's just not possible to push it any lower.
Yep.
I beg to differ. I feel our frontline workers who are selling inventory for airlines, hotels, car rentals, attractions, deserve some recognition. So I think it would be most meaningful and helpful if we can have them access to truly special industry benefits. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert. Very interesting ideas. I do want to take a step back, mindful of the time as well, and maybe ask each speaker this, right? And Albert touched on it a little bit, which is attracting and retaining people within the company. I want to expand that broader, attracting and retaining people within the industry, right? What do we need to do as an industry? And this involves government, involves tripartite relationships coming together, right? The whole ecosystem coming together to make the travel industry the industry of choice, the career of choice for people out there. Maybe Kenneth, we start with you, then we go down the line.
Okay, so I guess in some concluding remarks, I'll keep it very short. I think one is travel agents would really, and I think many of them are already doing it, and many of you are doing it, is really about redesigning your traditional job roles to see how you can, leverage on technology, embrace digitalization. I think you probably heard this so many times. I'm not going to elaborate on it, but I think it is important to then see how you can then, use digital technologies to see how you could remove the mundane kind of tasks and then focus on higher value, higher productive tasks that is a lot more exciting for the new generation of workers. I think that is quite critical. And the other piece of advice I would like to give is that, it's important for travel agents, the bosses also think about really developing very robust and structured progression career pathways for the employees. I think that's important. These are, I think, alluded to in the McKinsey presentation earlier also, the new generation of workers. Sometimes when they come to an office, it's not just about dollars and cents. There's a lot of other factors that also motivate them. So I think giving them meaning in terms of why they are doing what they're doing and coming up with a very structured career growth map, I think is quite critical for retention as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Kenneth. Give it.
Yeah. Well, maybe to add on and not to repeat some of the things you said. I think we've seen several, in our work in NTUC, we've seen several industries. And I think industries that show to at least the country, that we are getting ourselves together, getting our act together, working together as an industry. We compete sometimes, but we collaborate a lot of times to make the industry do well. I think a lot of the work that we've been doing today and in the past 2 years, and hopefully in the future, will attract people into the industry. And it is no longer a competition among competitors in the same industry today for workforce. It is a competition among industries for workforce. You know, Singapore's strategy has always been keep the labor market tight. That's why two jobs per worker. Of course, there's a mismatch. But really, how do we then come together as the travel industry, various parts of the travel industry, tourism industry, how do we come together and show to the other industries, show to the workers in all industries that we are hunting together as a pack? How do we hunt our workers together as a pack? And to do that, providing them appropriate meaning. That's a very internal. Passion burns out very quickly. Meaning and purpose lasts. Provide appropriate remuneration packages. That is one way that people see is reward and recognition. And of course, most importantly, provide a pathway. It's not that one job and that job is a dead end for me. I think we can come together, show that we work together, provide these three. I think we will be more competitive.
Thanks, Gilbert. Albert, any final thoughts?
Well, I think Gilbert just said, I think meaning, you know, I believe job satisfaction is very important. I think our employees must be able to see the effect of what they do, with all the training they have received and the services they are providing. Can they see that it has actually an impact on their customer? All right, what they have done for the customer and for the company. So they must be able to equate that, you know, that what I'm doing is now producing some very value outcome.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think that brings meaning and satisfaction to the person. So I think going forward, we also have to be more engaging with our employees, and we need to, like what they say, this is a new catchword. We need to build better.
Yep.
Yeah, our employees, our company.
Thanks, Albert. With that, we've come to the end of the panel. Thank you, everyone, for your kind attention. And if you can join me in thanking the panelists as well for this very great session. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.